Hello students, welcome back to Prudence Coaching English class. Here we provide ICSE, CBSE and WBSE solutions. Today we are going to discuss about the poem The Mountain and the Squirrel by Ralph Waldo Emerson. This is our all-in-one content students. Here you will get the difficult word notes, line by line explanation, description about the poet, summary of the poem and the most important question answer. So students, don't skip anything, otherwise it can harm your examination. If you want to get common all the question answer from this chapter, if you want to understand the poem the best, then must you have to watch everything. So let's start this. First we'll start with the word notes. It will help you to understand the poem better. So we'll discuss the word meanings first. Here the word prig means a self-righteously moralistic person who behaves as if they are superior to others. The next word is bun, which means the squirrel in this poem. Doubtlessly means certainly or without any doubt. Sphere means here earth. Disgrace means insult or loss of reputation. Next there is pry means active or lively. The next word is deny. Deny means refuses to admit or disagree with or challenge to accept anything. Next there is wisely. Wisely means prudently or intelligently. Now we will start our line by line explanation of the poem. Now this is the poem The Mountain and the Squirrel by Ralph Waldo Emerson. The mountain and the squirrel had a quarrel. So once there was a quarrel in between the mountain and the squirrel. Student, this is an imaginary poem and here the poet has personified the mountain and the squirrel just like human beings. And the former called the latter little pig. So here former means mountain and the latter refers to the squirrel. So here the poet says that the mountain calls the squirrel the little prig. That means the little creature who as if behaving in the way knows everything. Now Ban replied. Ban means here the squirrel. So here squirrel replied in respect to the mountain's question that you are doubtlessly very big. So the squirrel tells that there is no doubt that you are very big in size, but all sorts of things and weather must be taken in together to make up a year and a sphere. So here the squirrel strengthens his motive or strengthens his point that there is nothing useless on this universe, everything has its own value. So if we want to make up a complete year or if we want to make this complete universe as a whole, then we must want everything together so that we can make everything complete. Or in the other way, the squirrel has tried to say that God has kept everything very wisely, or the God has put everything very arranged way so that we can make the universe a complete one. Next the squirrel says, and I think it no disgrace to occupy my place. So here the squirrel says that he feels no insult or he feels no disgrace to hold his own position. If I am not so large as you, you are not so small as I. So here the squirrel tells that he is not as large as the mountain and the mountain is not as small as the squirrel and not half so spry. So here the squirrel tells that he is very lively and active, so the mountain cannot take his place, and that's why while the squirrel is very active, the mountain cannot be so active. I will not deny you make a very pretty squirrel track. So here the squirrel tells that he definitely admits the mountain's contribution to his life. The mountain has offered him to stay on it, so he does not deny the mountain's contribution to his life. That the mountain has offered the little squirrel a very pretty squirrel track, that means very beautiful squirrel track, and he does not deny it. Talents differ, all is well and wisely put. So every individual has its own talents and everything is very well and very beautiful, and God has very skillfully or prudently chosen everything. If I cannot carry forest on my back, neither you can crack a nut. So here the squirrel once again tries to appease the mountain, and next he says that if it's not possible for the squirrel to hold the forest on its back, that means here the squirrel tells that there is a large forest that can be grown on the mountain, and so in the sense the mountain is holding the total forest on its back. So it's totally impossible for a squirrel to hold a complete forest on it like that of the mountains. But the mountain itself cannot crack a mere nut, which is possible for a little squirrel. So that is the difference, students. Here the poet has actually tries to personify this squirrel and the mountain to give us the message that in this universe everything has its own value. We should not underestimate anyone or anything. Everything has been perfectly established, or everything had been perfectly set up by the Almighty. So we should respect each and everything that has been created by our God. So this is our line by line explanation. I hope you have understood everything. If you find any problem, then let us know about this. We'll definitely try to solve your doubt. Now we'll discuss the poet's description. Students, while we are reading any content, we should have a brief idea about the poet as well. Now the poet, this is the picture of the poet Ralph Waldo Emerson. So Ralph Waldo Emerson was an American essayist, lecturer, philosopher and poet. He was seen as a champion of individualism. Emerson was born in Boston, Massachusetts on 25th May 1803. He was the son of Ruth Hawkins and the Rev. He was named after his mother's brother Ralph and his father's great grandmother Rebecca Waldo. Emerson's formal schooling began at the Boston Latin School in 1812 when he was 9. In October 1817, at the age of 14, Emerson went to Harvard College. Emerson served as class poet. His leading essays are Self-Reliance, Nature, The American Scholar, Friendship, and the Experience. Emerson became known as the central figure of his literary and philosophical group, now known as the American Transcendentalists. By the 1870s, the aging Emerson was known as the Sage of Concord. Emerson died on April 27, 1882 in Concord. So we have finally discussed about the poet. Now we are going to discuss about the poem. Students, if you want to write all the question answer from this poem, so you must have to memorize this summary, because a summary of the poem plays a very important role while we are writing the question answer from the poem. So let's discuss this. The Mountain and the Squirrel by Ralph Waldo Emerson narrates about the strengths and the weaknesses of two quarreling characters. Means the Mountain and the Squirrel. The poem begins with the speaker describing how a mountain and a squirrel got into an argument. The huge mountain calls the tiny squirrel a little prig. The squirrel, or the bun, replies that while it is not as big as the mountain is not even half as energetic as the squirrel. To make up a year and a sphere, all sorts of things and weather must be taken into consideration. The talents of both the mountain and the squirrel differ greatly. If the squirrel cannot carry the forest on its back, then the mountain cannot crack a tiny nut. The majority of the text is made up of the squirrel doing what it can to convince the mountain it is worthy of living there, even though it is smaller. This poem reminds us we don't have to underestimate anyone. Everyone has a unique talent. The squirrel is no lesser than the mountain, and the mountain is no higher than the squirrel. So finally, we have come to the end of this summary. Now we'll discuss the most important question answer from this poem. Student, these are the repeated questions from this chapter which has been asked frequently in all the examinations. So the first question is, how many times does the mountain speak in the poem? The answer is, the mountain spoke only once in the poem. Now the next question, that is, how does the squirrel defend itself against the big mountain? Answer. This question is also important, students, so prepare this very well. The squirrel defends itself against the big mountain by saying that although it is small in size, it is more lively and energetic if than the mountain. If it cannot carry forest on its back, then the mountain surely cannot crack a nut. Next question, would you call this poem a fable? Give reasons for your answer. Answer. I would call this poem a fable because this poem teaches us that each person has his or her own individual talents, and everyone or everything in this world has its purpose. No one is superior or no one is inferior in this world. Now the next answer is, we have to provide some reasons for this. The squirrel in the poem showcased its talent, stated that God has put all the creatures in its proper place and all of them have different talents. Therefore, we shouldn't underestimate any creature on the basis of their size. Now the next question, why did the mountain call the squirrel little prig? The mountain calls the squirrel little prig because the squirrel is too small compared to the mountain. Now the next question, why does the poet talk about a year and a sphere? This is also one of the most important question from this chapter. The poet talks about a year and a sphere because to make up a year and a revolution around the world, all types of things and weather must be taken into consideration. Now the next point, what was the cause of the fight between the mountain and the squirrel? Why do you think so? So the first answer is, the main cause of the fight between the squirrel and the mountain is regarding their size and ability. Now the next part, the reason. I think it because in the poem the huge mountain considers the tiny squirrel a little prig, and the squirrel replies to the mountain by saying that while it isn't as large as the mountain isn't even half as energetic as the squirrel. So finally, we have discussed all the important question answer from this chapter. Students, we have discussed everything related to this poem. So students, if you find this content helpful, don't forget to subscribe, share, like our videos. Thanks for watching, students. Have a nice day.